Hi, Easy here. Welcome to my 3.7 Legion build showcase. We'll be covering a Scion Lacerate. Um, the main reason why I wanted to play around with Scion is particularly because of the new changes to Berserker Ascendancy. So I really wanted to give that a try, see if Scion's still strong enough to contend with specialized Ascendancies along with the nerfs from 3.6 to Slayer Overleach, and just some observations about my thoughts on the melee changes as well as Lacerate as a skill. Uh, all in all, it was a worthwhile experiment, I think. I'm not a fan of melee skills in general in this game. I think even after the melee rework, I don't think it's as smooth as some of the caster playstyles that the game offers. So that's mostly like personal preference. I think melee is in a significantly better spot than before. I actually really enjoy the rage mechanic that I'm showcasing right now, because it's just a really fast playstyle that I've never really experienced before, with attack speeds as high as 10.0, 10 attacks per second. So I think it's really fun. I really like the rage mechanic. That's like the main highlight for this build specifically. But the main thing with the rage is that the support gem that provides rage is extremely costly. As in, it's a whole support gem that doesn't really provide as much damage as like another support gem would. And uh, rage, like Berserk as a mechanic, also feels really strong when it goes off and really weak when it runs out, because you're losing all of those rage stacks that you built up. So almost, unless I'm trying to burst down a big target in a small time frame, or I'm taking on Legion monoliths, it almost feels like it's better to just keep the 50 rage and just go with that. Run with that, get the extra movement speed, attack speed, and just run the rest of the map with that on instead of engaging with the Berserk mechanic actively. And I think that's a real shame. I feel like they should have made it so that the rage mechanic was more free flowing, where you're constantly gaining rage and you can constantly expend rage. And I think that would have been more interesting, or rather at least extend the duration that rage lasts and make it less punishing. I'm not sure what exactly needs to make it feel more usable, but it definitely is fun. I think that's the most important part. I don't think certain skills have to be strong always, as long as it provides a different gameplay, and that's exactly what rage does. I don't think I would spec for rage. I would, outside of being a berserker or a scion, like I mentioned. I think investing into a rage gem outside of what's already part of your ascendancy is a little costly. As you can see, the damage output is actually quite nice. That was a T15 boss, and I think the map is clear. I'm just trying to farm for some T15 maps and T16 maps, because I shaped up my atlas to farm for Elder Beaches and Elder Bazaar. So that's the main focus that I'm looking at for my atlas progression so far after I killed Uber Elder. But as for the skill tree, let's first quickly go over it. I currently have two Might of the Meeks. These are only like 10 chaos, so they're fairly cheap cheap currently, providing a lot of resistances. I went with mana because I wanted to reserve as much as possible to get my precision up, but I could have definitely went with life regen and a little bit of life here. Uh, there's just a ton of life from the Scion life field. This is nothing too uncommon. I can also grab an Unnatural Instinct, which did get nerfed, but it's still quite good, especially because you don't have to invest into as much accuracy elsewhere. Um, crit multi is definitely better, but this isn't the end of the world. You still get a lot of attack speed bonuses, some life, as well as some movement speed, so definitely still worth the 1 exalt, 1.5 exalt I think it's running at. Down here, we start off with the duelist tree. So for the Scion Ascendancy, I took Berserker and Slayer, mainly for the Overleech and cannot take reflected area damage or reflected physical damage. You can definitely feel the nerfs that Scion Slayer got, and just Overleech as a whole received from the 3.6 synthesis leech changes. So I don't really think Slayer is that good anymore. Um, like Slayer as a leech source of Overleech is that good. I don't think Overleech is as strong as it was previously. Um, that doesn't mean Slayer as an Ascendancy is bad because there's still incredibly powerful nodes other than the Overleech. But for Scion Slayer, the main reason why I still have it is for the cannot take reflective physical damage, because sometimes when I'm shaping up maps through the map device right here, I don't want to run into a map that I can't run. So that's the main reason why I have it. But if I were to go for a more end game setup that focuses on bossing, maybe I could go with a Raider for that extra frenzy charge generation even during bosses, and guaranteed source of onslaught and more movement speed. But yeah, that would change the skill tree entirely because we no longer get to start from duelist. But we're mostly focusing on swords and a little bit of bleed. I kind of want to spec out of bleed entirely and just go with crit and accuracy. Crit attack speed and accuracy as much as I need it, as well as just dual wielding nodes. So far we have a lot of damage, we have decent amount of life, and it's been pretty good. I think damage output of Lacerate is quite nice. The main issue with Lacerate is that it feels amazing for single target. It feels atrocious when it comes to Legion mechanics and dealing with maps that are open, which Legion mechanics tend to prefer. Because the thing with Lacerate is that it has to name lock. So when I go, let's go over Blood Aqueducts real quick. Blood Aqueduct is a really good example of a good map because it's linear. But if I were to go in the middle and attack a certain way, in a direction, you see how the character has to turn and attack behind you in order to target it. And I can't just move my mouse over there and pick a direction that I want to attack. There has to be a target there. If there is a target there, it will focus on that target first, which means that using Lacerate has a lot of awkward moments where it won't target the stuff that you want it to target. And that's like the main problem with Lacerate. I think the skill itself is still pretty fun, especially with extremely high attack speed that Rage and multi-strike and dual wielding can get you. So I don't think it's a bad skill. It definitely can clear everything. I can take this guy into Uber Elder right now and just clear right now, even at level 89. Like I don't feel like I would have any issues going into Uber Elder, and I've put about the same amount of currency investment into this character as I did with my other character, so it's definitely on par in terms of strength. But if I were to spend 10x, I spent about 10x on this character. If I were to spend that same amount of money on a Cyclone character that focuses just strictly on Cyclone and like Impale, that would have been like significantly stronger. So yeah, that's like the main problem with Lacerate is just how it feels. Mechanically, it's just strictly inferior to other mechanics. Single target, Blade Fury wins out. AoE, Cyclone wins out. And it's nice to be able to swap between those things. And I do feel like it's better than Bladestorm personally. But overall, there's a lot of nuances that you need to get right in order to make Lacerate feel good. But as for the passive tree, like I mentioned, it's fairly straightforward, just going for some weapon ranges because Lacerate actually scales pretty well with weapon range. It also enhances the AoE clear. And I just have a Lethal Pride in here that I found. I haven't really spec'd for it specifically, nor did I re-roll for anything, mainly because it's not mine. It's my friend's who I borrowed it from because he's playing a different character. But yeah, we're just more levels will get us this melee crit node, and maybe we'll spec out of a bleed damage and go for more survivability or more range or something like that. It's up in the air. I'm not sure exactly where I want to take this character. And in fact, I've been looking at a different character entirely. I'm fairly satisfied with what I've gotten out of this. I was already doing red maps by the time I was like 75. So this character is definitely strong if you invest into it. And I think there's a lot of support available for this kind of build. Gear wise, I have like 350 DPS foils on both sides. Cost me like 6x. I have 6x total. I have a main mana cost chest that I just bought for 5x. Not the greatest, but for 5 exalts at this current state of the game, it's not too bad. I'm gonna keep this one around for any melee based build that I do in the future. So it's definitely worth it, especially with white sockets. I feel like I got pretty lucky with that one. I have a Starkondra's head with lacerate damage. I probably didn't need to get this with an enchantment. I probably could have gotten like a 5 chaos one, but no big deal. I actually got pretty lucky with these gloves. I had a item level 83 spike gloves running around in my inventory. I put on an Insanity essence and managed to hit this in two tries. A little bit of resistances, 43% total elemental resistance, and 16% more attack and cast speed, along with a little bit of armor and around 80. I believe that's like 89 life, so 90 life. So I think that's pretty worth it. I'll definitely keep this one around, or maybe sell it. Boots are nothing crazy, just a little bit of ton of life, resistances, and movement speed. Belt is actually quite nice. Self-crafted this one. Got pretty lucky with a pristine, and I believe it was elemental, whatever the one that gives you elemental mods. Just triple resistances and life. Amazing. Rings are nothing special. This is the same ring that I used on my cast while channeling Cyclone Trickster, so I just brought it over. This is a leveling ring. I still haven't replaced it. Haven't found the need. Necklace is also just something I found in my inventory. Just a little bit of physical damage and crit chance, and then life. Since all my resistances are taken care of here and from the passive tree, this one gives like 36 resistance per node, which is amazing. And that's pretty much it for gear. Just same flask that I used on my Cyclone character, outside of Lion's Roar and a Sulfur Flask that has literally nothing. I think the Pantheon is quite important for this character. I have Soul of Ralakesh for the physical damage over time, reduce physical damage over time for Blood Rage, and avoid bleeding, as well as you can't be blinded or maimed. And then Soul of Solaris with fully upgraded to help with survivability, especially the crit chance. Can't be critted if you have taken a crit recently, and reduce elemental damage if I haven't taken damage. So that's really nice. Make sure you guys get that. It's not too difficult. Only one that's really hard is the Infernal King, because that's from Caldera, which is tier 15. But everything else should be very easy to acquire. Let's go over to gems real quick. I have Lacerate. Let's look at Lacerate first. 6 links. Actually, technically, like, how many is this? Like 8 links, but don't worry too much about that. It's from level 1 maim and mana cost. You definitely don't need that. Lacerate with Fortify, melee physical, multi-strike, brutality, and impale. So I've tried out different ones, including pulverize for more AoE. I've tried out ruthless with bleed focus. I've tried out rage gem on top of the rage generation from Berserker. So I've tried out multiple ones, and I feel like if you want to go for more of that rage-based playstyle with Berserk that I mentioned earlier, where you're constantly building up rage, constantly spending rage through Berserk, and just trying to engage in a more active playstyle through that, Rage Gem is definitely amazing for it. I really had a lot of fun with it. It just didn't feel as strong as some of the other options. I have Impale in here for single target, helping out single target, which is what this build really shines on, I feel like, with Bloodstance and just bashing on an enemy with my Ancestral War Chiefs. So that's like the highlight, I feel like. But it's fairly straightforward melee based gem socket setup. On my helm, I have Blood Rage with Dread Banner, Blood and Sand, and Berserk. Doesn't really matter, these guys are just one-socketers. On my boots, I have the Ancestral Warchief setup, which is just Warchief with Bloodlust, Brutality, and Melee Physical. This is amazing for Legion because they'll just go around and just fucking bop everything and do their own thing while you can go to a different area and clear that area. So having a 4-link Ancestral Warchief is extremely strong for Legion mechanic. It's definitely worth the 4 links, especially because you can't utilize something like uh, Val Ice Nova and Val Arc, which most people tend to be using if you're a spellcaster. So this is a pretty decent workaround, and it's amazing. The Bloodlust support especially is amazing against single target bosses and things like Uber Elder. So definitely recommend a 4-link setup for this. On my gloves, I have Blood Magic, Leap Slam, Endurance Charge, and faster attacks with the 16% more attack and cast speed. So my Leap Slam is like ridiculously fast. And we also get Rage. So once we have fully stacked Rage, Leap Slam is just going off like crazy. So it's more of a quality of life. You don't need the Insanity Glovecraft at all. That 16% more isn't that crazy, but there is a difference, and I really had fun with it. On my weapon, I have a Summon Ice Golem, a Cast 1 Damage Taken, and a Molten Shell. And you can tell my Cast 1 Damage Taken support is level 18, and the main reason for that is because I want to be able to summon Ice Golem at a high level, so that not only does it have a large enough life pool to be able to stay up for majority of the mapping, but also have increased crit chance and increased accuracy. And then we have Molten Shell, and I feel like I need to unlink this sometimes because more often than not, I feel like I die before this gets used, and that kind of defeats the purpose of having Molten Shell. So I might test with a separated link for Molten Shell and give that a try. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, but having it on Cast 1 Damage Taken doesn't seem like it's as strong as manually casting it, especially because it doesn't proc when you want to mitigate damage, and instead it's just a response. So that's something that I want to look at. On my other weapon, I have just Precision, Herald of Purity, and Flesh and Stone. So gem setups are very straightforward. There's a lot of flexibility, especially with where you place these green gems. You could definitely just put everything, like put both green gems on your weapons, and try and work around something like that. It's extremely easy to get off-color sockets on 3 sockets because it's cheap. It's just 3 jewelers, like 4 jewelers per try, and it's also not that bad on helm either. You could use Abyssus, but I feel like the increased damage taken wasn't worth it. But yeah, it's a very straightforward build. I feel like the melee skills, you can use any sword-based melee skills if you want. I could just tack on a Cyclone, I can tack on a Blade Storm, I can tack on Blade Flurry, I can tack on whatever your favorite sword-based melee skill is and perform perfectly fine. You can even change this up to a projectile-based with like Shattering Steel, or what is the other one? Lancing Steel. You could go with that with more focus on impale effects and stuff like that. So it's a very generic Scion melee build. And if I were to compare Scion to some of the different ascendancies, I feel like there's a lot of it is definitely lacking in a lot of departments. It tries to cover up a lot of its weaknesses, but it doesn't actually it doesn't really highlight any strengths either. And I feel like that's a problem with this like ascendant, like Scion class as a whole, but that's a different story. But yeah, definitely Berserker is pretty fun to play with, especially because you don't have to socket for Rage Gem in your main skill. Having 15% more damage is also pretty nice, and having not being able to get stunned when we have more than 25 rage is also really nice. So Berserker is definitely a strong choice. Slayer is a strong choice literally for cannot take reflected physical damage at this point, I really don't feel like the Overleech is worth it. Culling Strike is also pretty nice, but I feel like Raider is going to be a better option for you know, just permanent onslaught no matter what, permanent frenzy charge on your bosses. So if you were to focus more on bossing rather than mapping, then Raider is probably a better option. That does mean you have to change around the skill tree quite a bit since you can't path through here. But yeah, that's why I haven't changed yet, because I'm a little lazy. I'm pretty satisfied with what I've gotten so far. I'm already looking at another build, another character for speed farming tier 16s. I figured this was good enough, but I don't really like it that much. Surprisingly, yeah, I feel like I just want more out of my character, and I also invested quite a bit, and I did feel like I get my investments worth, but Melee League is too expensive, man. Like going with meta stuff is just too expensive. So next I'm gonna be making a Wander. So we'll see what the hell happens with that. Thank you guys for tuning in for the video. I'll leave a POV down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye bye.